Hi everyone, I'm Valeria Botalico, Education and Accessibility Manager here, curator of a polyphonic project. And today it's my pleasure to converse, to introduce you Giulia Bruno and Giuseppe Ielasi, visual artist, photo film the one, and sound artist and musician the other. And to introduce you the new video work called On the Other Ocean. The video, part of a large work under construction, has the ocean and language as its protagonists and originates from a long-term research project called Abecedarium, the Ocean in Sign Language. It is an inclusive and participatory project involving many partners and actors. The scientific support of a team of researchers from Institute of Marine Sciences, led by Angela Pomaio, deaf people involved through a call, and thanks to the support of ENS, Italian Deaf Agency, and deaf linguistic and not researchers from Institute of Cognitive Sciences and Technology. Giulia Bruno has followed the entire project process since the beginning in 2020. I would like to ask you first, Giulia, what struck you and what motivated you to undertake this new research? Please, Giulia, and thank you so much for your work.
So, first of all, I was super interested in the process of the creation of neologism. What was driving me, it was this kind of sense of looking what it's possible to create from zero or from what is already existing, because this is a double meaning, because in fact this process is super difficult in the flow of the process of language creation. And in the previous research also I had the possibility to look into the creation of the Atlante Linguistico Italiano, and so this kind of parallelism was super interesting, because in a certain way, when you start to create words, you have to look a lot of issues, which are, for example, what does it mean nation, what does it mean language justice, what does it mean norms, what does it mean rules, and then what does it mean functionality. So all these topics were inside this process that you did with Abecedarium. So this was the first trigger that I got, plus, of course, the important fact that the accessibility to the political question also that the community of the deaf just should have the right to have.
Giuseppe, you are a sound artist, and Giulia involved you in this ambitious, complex research project. What inspired you?
Yeah, as you said, I was not involved since the beginning in the project as Giulia was. Giulia took part in all the workshops and meetings, and she went really deep into the process of this whole project. I was invited by her to participate, so to be on location when we shot the video and recorded the sound, even though recording the sound is kind of a complex matter in this case, working with deaf people. And then we are used since many years to work together on film projects, both in shooting, but mostly in editing and in the composition part of a film. So having to deal with lots of source material and footage, and then sort of use this material to compose a film. I use the word compose because we really work in a very musical way. So we always work with following the rhythm of the images, rhythm of the words, and sort of narrative. And sometimes this is not very traditional, I would say, in film editing. So what inspired me? That's a hard question, because you know, I'm happy to work with Giulia. So that's the reason. That's really basically the reason, because I had no reference besides this about this project. There's very few films involving deaf people, mostly that have also been quite. There's a lot of critique about those films, because we know how hard it is to actually film and transpose the sign language on screen, especially in a way that's not very conventional, as we are used to see on television, for instance. So we had few references, but this is really not a problem for me, because I never think in terms of references, and I never think in terms of having something that inspires me to do something else. So what I really love and what really motivates me is to work on a experience, in this case, a very new experience for me. So not like, you know, collaborating with other musicians, or which is, you know, you might not know a musician, but we know the practice of playing music together. We are quite familiar with it. This was very new. I don't go so much on film sets or on film shootings. I'm more of a studio person, so more someone that likes to work with archive of material and then compose with it. So this was already quite interesting for me. But what really motivates me is the experience. So we were very clear about not wanting to meet the people that would be working with us with a script. We were very clear that what we like to do is to try to establish a dialogue and improvise and see what happens, and then generate material, and this material will be used for a composition. So I don't know. There's nothing in particular that really inspired me. Just the experience and the chance of working with Giulia and the chance of working with her in a context that both of us are not very familiar with. Yeah.
Guys, you chose as the title "On the Other Ocean." Why is that, and what does it mean?
The title it's actually, I mean, there's plenty of meanings, but it comes from a very simple idea. It comes from a reference to quite a well-known record by David Berman. So it's a music piece by David Berman from 1978. David Berman is a pioneer in electronic music and interaction of electronic sounds with the traditional musical instruments. I would say that this record is quite a lot about translation and interaction of two different words, and find the possibility to create feedback between two different situations. And it was quite hard for us to find a way to film those conversations between deaf people. There are quite a lot of practical issues involved. You have to have for sure you have to have an interpreter that translates to us, so we can interact and understand what they're saying, because we are not able to read and decode sign language. And at the same time, the interpreter is not, well, it's real time, but there's always a little delay in the translation. So the interaction is quite, I mean, not difficult, but it's a very peculiar one. It's something that you have to deal with and think about it. And also filming sign language imposes you some practical decisions that then you have to deal with when you're editing, and where you're actually have to make sure that all the signs are visible, etc. So the title is a sort of a reference, more of a poetic reference, that at the same time deals with the idea of other, not in the sense of otherness of something different, but in the sense of somehow representing or translating something into something else, I would say. And at the same time, it's, on my side at least, it wasn't much of a very strong conceptual reference, but much more an idea of a poetic reference. So something that narrates the possibility of something else, of other possibilities, and of also different words, like in this case, an old record that I also happen to like a lot. Yeah.
Super. I agree in total with what already Giuseppe said. I can also add that I mean, all the work started in a conversation. Of course, with Giuseppe, we had many conversations regarding everything, and also regarding the title. And I think that one other interesting aspect is to speak regarding ocean. And also, we have to think that also the complexity of the project involves also the fact that we were bringing also other content. For example, the climate change, scientific aspect, and description, because first of all, the necessity of the deaf community to create these knowledges started from the fact that in sign language, some scientific words are not existing in the sense of approved common, as in a common language. Of course, I think that many words regarding it are existing in some community that needs to speak regarding, for example, the ocean or regarding other aspects. So the other ocean in itself, I think, contains also this kind of discovering something that is existing, but it's not always visible. So it contains also the bridge regarding landscape, discovering, translation, but it also can be also a very interior and private experience. And we also liked a lot to refer also to the sound in a context in which we think that sound is not existing, but I think it's existing a lot. Also, when we look, for example, what doesn't happen on the ocean itself, or also in the community itself, for us to cut the sound was not possible. So we thought that to let enter totally the sound also with the title, but also with other shadows of the title, other, ocean, climate change, private life, translation, bridge, was very interesting and important. It was a challenge because, of course, also we have to consider that the work is a conversation. We like the idea to start with a conversation and to let act this conversation totally without a real control, like happens in a normal way to speak, or like happens in life. I mean, to try to see what is possible to control, what is possible to not control, and what is going out of path.
The production of the work had several levels of languages to combine: visual, sound, linguistic. How did you overcome or deal with this complexity?
First of all, we use what we are used to do. We try to observe, and we understood all the complexity. And so we try to use our way also to film or to use music, our distance, because for example, we use a kind of different way to frame the person. I mean, what we decided to do is to reintroduce also the landscape, because when you look, for example, the way in which deaf use images is always super neutral. There is a kind of standard that it's used, of course, for functional reason, because we need to read. I mean, it's very fascinating that we need to read. Language is something that need to be read. So in a certain way, we decided to reintroduce the landscape, and when the complexity was to keep a poetical movement, because as also Giuseppe said, we approach the work with a kind of rhythm, and also we decided to keep the possibility to read the language in every moment. So we didn't cut the image. We tried to play with it, very creating some shift. And when we decided to work with a diptych in a certain way to bring back this kind of movement, like a wave in the video. So to have a wave of like a conversation splitted into act. And then we decided to introduce act, introducing some stop, some re-entering, but always with the give back the dignity of the language to be able to be detected, decodified. And the other aspect that for us was very important, it was also to think that the public, it's not only the deaf community, but also all the person, all the communities, to start to think that there is one public, all the person, all the people, everybody. So to give this opportunity to be triggered, to enter in this kind of desire to understand, desire to learn, and desire to be also hypnotized.
I don't think there were technical problems in the sense that we have to negotiate with the situation we're in, and with of course the two, let's say, actors that are on screen, to find a way to film them in a way that is clear. But we also wanted to maybe simply sort of break the rules of normal filming of a communication between two deaf people. So we had to find a way to do it. We tried to do it, we did it in separate screens, so to keep a sort of visual continuity of the amazing communication that's with them, that's also visually very interesting. I know this is actually a very superficial point of view, because it's visually interesting for me because I cannot understand what they're saying. At the same time, it's not really about visual for them, it's really about communicating for them. So it's very ambiguous, and at the same, there's a lot of critical point, but we try to to approach them with a sort of just observe what's happening and try to translate it. And at the same time, we had to take some decisions, like, for instance, why there is sound. Do we keep sound? In this case, we kept some ambient sound, we kept some location sound, but we also had some post-production sounds and some music. And we had to also, we realized that in a way that it's quite interesting for us that almost nobody can actually experience the whole of the film in one go, because like if I cannot read sign language, so I will need to read the subtitles, but I will completely miss a lot of the visual aspect, or a lot of the choreography of the two acts on scene. A deaf person at the same time will actually might not need the subtitles, even though in some cases he will need, because some signs are very new, but he will not be able to experience the music. It's a slightly frustrating experience for everyone, and at the same time I think we enjoyed this kind of difficult situation in which every viewer will be put in. And so the reason why we didn't want, as Giulia said, we didn't want to film the persons in a standardized frame as it usually happens, so with a neutral landscape, or not landscape, just like neutral, how do you say, just the back, and the closer framing of the speaking person, is that we try to slightly push the limits a little bit and see how far we can go. And of course, this created some difficulties of acceptance between some parts of the editing and the community. But I think this is a very interesting dialogue that opens up, and that allows us to bring what we can bring, which is our observation, which of course is very partial, because we are not only we are not deaf, but we are not even part of the community or researchers in this area. Like Paula, for instance, since Paula was our interpreter, but she's also, say, a researcher in this, or part of this community. We are not part of this community, and we had to try to find our way in and try to find a way to film that would work for them, but that would also create some sort of how can you say, interesting or critical possibilities for us. So to be in a dialogue which was at some point also a bit difficult, that's some difficulties, but we think we managed to make it work, probably. I hope so. Yeah.
Maybe I would like also to say this, that for us was also, thanks Giuseppe that you remember it, that was a kind of way to say, okay, it's not possible for nobody to have a complete access in one way, but you need also to change. I mean, it's a way to change also the time. I mean, it's how long. I mean, I need to maybe to look one screen, and then to look the other screen, and then to read, and then to read the other screen, and then to understand, and then to read one image and the other image. So it's a way to say, okay, this conversation, how long can last? I mean, it's also a kind of question regarding conversation itself. So when we speak, how long we give the chance to the other to speak with us, or to hear, or to start this conversation, and with all the limits that the conversation has. So to be honest regarding it, to say, okay, there is something that cannot contain everything always. So we need to lose something. We need to negotiate something. We need to miss something. We need to erase something. We need to be loser also. So this was super interesting for us.
As Giuseppe said before, there are few videos or works that use sign language to create a poetic narrative in general, and specifically of the ocean. This production was the beginning of a larger work. How do you envision continuing the tale of another ocean, and why it is important to pursue this?
It's a hard question, because I don't have a clear idea about how this conversation could go on. But I think what really needs this, now we know, after the 2 days of shooting, now we know that certainly needs time. If we want to keep working with the deaf community, in this on this topic. It certainly needs time, and it certainly needs time to establish a dialogue that can also say produce something new regarding possibilities of filming, possibilities of recording this kind of conversation. As said, of course, I'm not a researcher of the deaf community, so the linguistic part, we were a bit, the linguistic research, I didn't necessarily follow all of it. My involvement was mostly related to how can we translate this onto a screen in a way that can be experienced by the deaf community, and at the same time that could be as a autonomous sort of work that could be seen by people that can actually hear. So if I have to think about the possibilities for the future, I would say that it could be interesting to basically to have time, to spend time with those people and to sort of establish a longer dialogue about those topics, but also not necessarily about those topics. So also about the way those researchers used to define symbols or signs, sorry. How can we manage to film them? Yeah, how can we manage to translate and communicate this to generic public, or even public in a more artistic world? So people that actually go to exhibitions, or people that could be interested in this sort of way of shooting.
For me, one also interesting part, it is to reread the history of photography, also looking the way in which we speak or the way in which we sign. Because in a certain way, also after this experience, I realized how many images were produced by the conversation. So through also imagination, because there is this kind of sign that dance in the air. So there is a kind of temporality that was super interesting, because there is a kind of something that passed through like the language, and it looks like something that it lasts for 1 second, but then there is also something super materic, because in the end there is a function, there is a way in which these signs are done, there is a way in which there is the written part. So also part of the previous research I did, and also I did also with Giuseppe for other film, are connected also to language, looked as a kind of technological act. So there is also this kind of desire to better investigate this kind of history of photography through landscape, and the connection with the functionality in a nation, and also with the other political issue connected, to be part of the general discussion that it is also connected to the climate, the possibility to have the right to say something, or to have the right to be heard, or to have the right to understand something, and to decide also to not speak in case, but to have the opportunity to learn. And the other, I mean, what I imagine it is to go through this kind of history of photography through the landscape, and then to restart this conversation with the deaf community, because what it can be interesting is to realize together how we can break the rules of the image composition more and more and more, and try to see that this can bring back the materic act of the language. So the creation of the sign and the diffusion of the sign, and keeping this question regarding language, rights, communication, composition, and what does it mean to stay together and to try to understand each other's.
As the curator of the project and the work, I am very happy to have embarked on this adventure with you, aware that the road is long and above all challenging, but we all want to give a voice to the ocean and make it strong. So thank you, Giulia, and thank you, Giuseppe. We look forward to seeing where the research will take us. So thank you.